Today, I would like to discuss a major problem within our society that we need to address. I'm talking about capital punishment. I want to explain to you why we should have alternatives to this. Capital punishment means the infliction of death for certain crimes. In the U.S., capital punishment is usually applied for murder, especially premeditated murder, or kidnapping with intent to do bodily harm or kill, and sometimes for instances of treason that endanger the lives of those living in a country. Capital punishment should be illegal because it is economically, morally, and ethically wrong. A human life for another does not make things equal. You hear of these cases in the news all the time, and somebody you know has probably ended up in jail at one time or another. Well, what if that person had killed somebody instead of robbing a store, for example, and gotten the death sentence? Would you still root for capital punishment then? As somebody whose father has worked in the prison system and seen firsthand what goes on in death row, I understand the injustice that takes place. Let's move on to the first issue. Keeping prisoners on death row is also very costly, much more so than keeping an inmate in prison, according to the New York Times. There are currently 2,843 prisoners waiting on death row as of April, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. And on average, they wait 15 years before execution, and each death penalty case costs Texas taxpayers approximately $2.3 million. Executions are an unnecessary cost, and in one case, the cost was $1,286.86, according to the BBC News magazine, and that was only for the drugs used to kill one man. This cost is unconstitutionally pushed onto taxpayers that have to burden it. For example, a 2015 study showed that in Washington, death penalty cases cost an average of $1 million more to prosecute than comparable cases where the death penalty is not sought. A 2012 study showed that death penalty has cost California more than $4 billion since 1978, and suggesting that commuting all the state's death sentences to life imprisonment would immediately result in $170 million in savings per year. In Kansas, death penalty cases studied between 2004 to 2011 cost around 4 times more than cases where the death penalty was not sought. States could save millions of dollars a year by eliminating the death penalty, according to National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. Now that I've explained how much it is for an execution case compared to a regular case, let's move on to the unethicality of it. According to ethics, theory, and practice, capital punishment is a direct violation of the value of life principle. Capital punishment amounts to murder, social murder, directed by society against one of its members. If taking a human life is wrong in other instances, then it is also wrong in this instance. Capital punishment can function as a form of societal retribution or revenge, but in a civilized society, this should not be deemed a sufficient motive for taking a human life. Killing a criminal will not bring back the victim or in any way compensate the survivors of that victim. Since it can't help bring back nor compensate, there really is no need for capital punishment. Another problem is that it is an effective deterrent. Capital punishment's opponents argue that there is no conclusive evidence of this final form of punishment keeping people from committing heinous crimes. They also question if it works so well, why do we perform them in the privacy of prisons instead of in the streets or on television? There is also a clear problem in the sentencing of people based on color and monetary position. In many cases, poor people are more likely to be convicted because they cannot afford an expensive attorney and lose out due to poor representation. Now that we've discussed ethics, I'd like to explain how it's morally wrong. Morally speaking, it should not be okay for a life to be taken in exchange for another. We're taught never to kill, and if we push for the death penalty, are we not engaging in the taboo of killing another human being? You must think of this as you causing their death intentionally from a distance, and that this process of capital punishment is like killing them yourself. So why does this not affect people like it would if they shot someone themselves? Just because you're not the one pulling the trigger doesn't mean that you aren't causing their death. Also, there are instances where unforgivably the wrong person is executed. Sometimes people accused of capital crimes are convicted on mainly circumstantial evidence, and therefore it is quite possible to execute an innocent person. If even one innocent person is executed, then capital punishment is a moral wrong. In conclusion, the death penalty is the worst form of punishment in numerous ways. Capital punishment is an unjust cancer within our society that needs to be cut out. The death sentence as an institution is outdated and beneath us as human beings. It is unjust not only morally and ethically, but an unnecessary cost to society as well. If we cut it out completely, the money could be used in ways to prevent the crimes we punish them for, like better education, skills programs, and mental health programs. You cannot stay silent on this issue just because it hasn't affected you directly. You need to get in touch with your representatives now and demand that capital punishment be abolished as an institution.